as a result of the 2012 presidential election, a great despair and disappointment came over me. I was hopeful for a Romney-Ryan win, but I was not surprised at the outcome. I was not surprised. Here's what I contend is this. If the GOP and the conservative movement can't find a way to address these three issues, we will never win the White House again, and we may, in fact, lose some seats in the Senate and a majority in Congress this coming 2014 midterm election. The three things I want to share with you that we have to find an answer for are this. Number one, we must find a way to inspire, not recruit, inspire more blacks, more Latinos, more women, and young people to join the ranks of the conservative movement. We have to do that. Number two, we must find a way how to defeat the vile and malicious propaganda attacks of the liberal left. We got to find a way to do that, because that's their most potent weapon, is to play the race card, play the class warfare card, where it takes away our tongue. We got to find a way to defeat that. Number three, we must find a way to excite the conservative base. Now, I don't use the word conservative and GOP interchangeably. I want to make sure I understand that. Okay, so that's why I said it the way I did. And so I want to do tonight, I'm going to share with you what the answer is. I did not come up with this answer. God gave me this answer. And he's perfected this answer in me. And I can share this answer with you. Tonight I'm going to talk about Frederick Douglass. I got to make sure your understanding of Frederick Douglass is on the proper level. And why did God give me Frederick Douglass as an example that's going to save this nation? I'm going to talk about Frederick Douglass. Then I'm going to get into this Frederick Douglass Republican methodology. Now, don't get hung up on the word Republican. Okay? God gave me Frederick Douglass Republican for a reason. I share with you why God gave me that Frederick Douglass Republican statement. I am a conservative, but that is not how I define myself politically. I am a Frederick Douglass Republican. So when I say that, that gives you a glimpse to what I believe in. Let me quickly dispel three myths about this Frederick Douglass Republican movement that God has given me, or this Frederick Douglass Republican methodology. Myth number one, that the Frederick Douglass Republican movement is a black membership organization. It's not. 60% of the people as part of our movement are white. 60%. Meaning that they identify themselves as a Frederick Douglass Republican, and they have been trained in this methodology of engagement. Myth number two, that the Frederick Douglass Republican methodology is a way how to share the conservative message to black folks. No. It's a way how to share the conservative message to all Americans. All Americans. Blacks, Latinos, women, young people, everyone. Myth number three, that white conservatives cannot successfully engage minorities, blacks. Stop believing that lie. Stop believing that lie. You can. You can do it successfully. As a matter of fact, when you use the Frederick Douglass Republican approach, it's more effective when you do it than when I do it. Now, why is it I don't use the word conservative? Because we're losing a propaganda battle. The word conservative, the word Tea Party, the word Republican, and the word Constitution, U.S. Constitution, those words have a negative connotation, especially in the black community, but not just in the black community, it's all over the country. And those words are synonymous with the word racist. If you call yourself a black conservative, you might as well call yourself a black racist. We're losing a propaganda battle. You call yourself a Tea Party conservative, you might as well call yourself a Tea Party racist. You see why we have a difficult time engaging? Because when you say you're a conservative to someone and you don't define what you mean, they may think you are a Bull Connor type conservative versus a Frederick Douglass type conservative. If you say you're a constitutional conservative, you might as well call yourself a racist. Why? Because what the left has done over years, the founding fathers gave us slavery in the Constitution. That blacks, I'm a graduate of a historical black college. I was taught that the founding fathers excluded blacks from the Constitution. That's why Douglass is key. Why Frederick Douglass? Here's why. Frederick Douglass was born as a slave, 1818. He was born below poverty. Frederick Douglass was born below poverty. See, when you're born into poverty, at least you own your own body. He was born below poverty. He did not even own his own body. He was a slave. Never wore a pair of shoes until he was 8 years old. Never slept in the bed to the age of 10. He was homeschooled, self-taught. Frederick Douglass started his own homeschooling program because before he escaped from slavery at the age of 20, he knew how to read and write. And Douglass had to flee to Europe for 21 months. Because why? He was a fugitive slave. And while he was in Europe, traveling and speaking, the people and his friends in Europe raised enough money to purchase his freedom. So when he came back, he was a free man. $717, what it cost to pay for his freedom. They did it in Europe, not the United States. The abolitionists didn't do it. They did it in Europe. So here's the relationship between Frederick Douglass and the Republican Party. Republican Party was started in 1854 by Charles Sumner. Had two major planks in this platform: to abolish slavery, because the slave masters were Democrats. Let me say that again so you don't think I said something different. The slave masters were Democrats. All right? Slave masters were Democrats. So the Republican Party was started to counter the Democrat Party, to abolish slavery and to advance the civil rights of black Americans. 1854. 1841, 14 years before the Republican Party was started, Douglass started speaking, traveling the North, talking about his experience as a slave and the need to abolish slavery. It was Frederick Douglass who declared political war on slavery. So within the abolitionist movement, because the abolitionists are the ones who started the Republican Party, within the abolitionist movement, Douglass became the face of it. He was a spearhead in the abolitionist movement to motivate the folks to do something politically to end slavery as the political party was started. Like I said, I'm a graduate of historical black college. I was taught that the founding fathers gave us slavery, and that because of the 3/5 clause saying blacks are 3/5 of human being. Douglass did something very interesting. Douglass went back and read the Constitution for himself. He didn't take their words for granted. Then he read the Founding Fathers Convention notes, the Federalist Papers, and Douglass put the two together. He said, wait a minute. The Constitution is not a pro-slavery document. It is an anti-slavery document. Douglass said, the Constitution reads, we the people. It does not say we the white people. Douglass said, if black folks are people, then they are to be included as benefactors of this Constitution. Douglass said the problem is not with the Constitution, the problem is in the application of the Constitution. He went on to say the problem is not with the Bible, the problem is in the application of the Bible. In a speech he gave 1861 in Glasgow, Scotland, 1861, when Douglass made that clarification. You see why Douglass is so key? What the opposition does, they tell blacks that the founding father excluded you from the Constitution. Douglass trumps that. Douglass was an advisor to 5 U.S. presidents. 5 U.S. presidents. Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, Rutherford Hayes, Benjamin Harrison, and Ulysses S. Grant. He was a capitalist, 1895. How much did this man who was born into slavery, stayed a slave at the age of 20, he wrote 3 books, never been to school, advised to the 5 U.S. presidents, how much did this man have in savings at the time of his death? Give me a few guesses. 200,000. Going once? How about 250? Might get 250, 300,000? 300,000. $300,000, which is the equivalent of $25 million today. So that's Douglas, the quintessential constitutional conservative. The quintessential constitutional conservative is Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass is the grandfather of the civil rights movement. Dr. King is the father of the civil rights movement. Dr. King got many of his ideas and strategies from the writings of Douglass. Remember I told you he owned two newspaper companies? He owned over 3,000 editorials and essays on immigration, on welfare mentality. Frederick Douglass is the bridge. He is the bridge how we can take the life-empowering message of the conservative philosophy and share it with all Americans. And we can inspire them to join our ranks. But you got to be trained how to do that. I had to be trained. I've been trained. And I can train you. And you can repeat the process. Success is not a secret. Success is a system. I'm going to give you the system tonight. In a speech Douglass gave 1868 called Our Composite Nationality, he said this: for humanity reasons, this is the best country in the history of the world. Let them come so they can improve the quality of life for themselves and their family. Douglass said, let them come. Then that same speech, Douglass said, whoa. Douglass said, whoa. Douglass said, there's a process that must be followed. Quote, Douglass said, they must bow to the same law. Bow is a form of respect. Respect the rule of law. Douglass said, two, they must speak the same language. That's what he said. Now, are you going to call him a racist because he said that? Douglass was a victim of racism. Douglass said, number three, they must understand the duties of citizenship and value and study the significance of our Constitution. What's the first duty of citizenship? To obey the law. When I say, or when anyone says that they are a Frederick Douglass Republican, that is an oxymoron for many folks. Republican, Frederick Douglass, how did that go together? Frederick Douglass, an icon of liberty. Republican, because we're losing the propaganda battle, an icon of racism. You put them together. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. When you say that, you just frame the debate. Now you're driving the narrative. You're not on the defense like you would be if you're a black conservative, Tea Party conservative. You're always on the defense. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. Don't call me outside my name. Never let anybody call you a conservative singularly or Republican singularly, because the attack is on and you will lose because you're always defending. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. That's setting up your perimeter. Okay? I said earlier, it's more powerful when someone that's not a black American says, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, than when a black American says it. Think about it. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. I'm a black American. That's my ethnicity. You expect me to say that. But when someone, not a black American, says that my values are in lockstep with a Frederick Douglass, who affirms the founding fathers and the Constitution, when you say it, you just silence them momentarily. But when you silence them, that's your chance to engage. Here's what I learned with this Frederick Douglass Republican methodology. The goal is not to get people to become Republicans. That's not the goal. The goal is to get people to vote their values. The Frederick Douglass Republican methodology, all it is the offensive strategy for the Tea Party. It's the offensive strategy for the conservative movement. It trumps the race card. You can't call a Frederick Douglass Republican a racist. You can't call a Frederick Douglass Republican a sellout. Douglass was a victim of racism. He was not an Uncle Tom or a sellout. He escaped from slavery, and through goading President Lincoln, Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. 4 million blacks were technically free from slavery. Trumps the race card. Class warfare attacks come off the table. Why? Douglas was a capitalist. Whew. All those attacks of the left, those arrows will fall harmlessly to the ground. Frederick Douglass is the bridge. Don't get me wrong. I'm not putting Douglass on the pedestal next to the Christ. I'm not doing that. But I'm looking at the values this man, not only these conservative values, not only did he write about it, he lived it. And those values improve this quality of life. Entrepreneurship, belief in limited government, respect for the Constitution. Those are conservative values. This particular Sunday, we have these, I have a shirt. I have one on now that says Frederick Douglass Republican. Matter of fact, it was this shirt I had on. You see the word Republican is larger than Douglas's name. So this Sunday, I said, I'm gonna wear my shirt to church. They wear their Obama shirt, I'm gonna wear my shirt. So I walked in, as soon as I walked to open the door, Mr. Patterson, NAACP leader, staunch NAACP, staunch Democrat, staunch Obama lover. He saw my shirt, he said, Smith, you're a Republican? I said, no, sir, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. Mr. Patterson went back, I can't touch that. Since he backed up, I knew I had him on the ropes, so I started engaging. I said, Mr. Patterson, do you respect the Constitution? He said, yes. Do you respect life, that all life is precious? He said, yes. I said, Mr. Patterson, do you believe in limited government? I mean, would you like to keep more of the money that you make? He said, yeah, Smith. I said, Mr. Patterson, do you believe in the biblical principle that if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat? He said, yes. Now, I wasn't surprised with his answer because this is a center-right nation. I wasn't surprised. I said, Mr. Patterson, you may not be a Republican, but you're definitely a Frederick Douglass Republican. That was the hook. To this day, Mr. Patterson is one of the most active individuals we have who's engaging every week. I have seen some of the most entrenched liberal Democrats, I don't care what ethnicity they are, change how they vote, especially if they're a believer. Especially if they're a believer. We tried our best to reach the Romney camp, and we did. We were like one person away from Governor Romney. We dialogued with Tag Romney, Governor Romney's oldest son, and we had a dialogue with Senator Bob Portman. I was told in an email, it came back to me and said, we have conceded the black vote to Obama. So my response was, I said, do you even know what you're saying? When you say that you're conceding the black vote, you're also saying you're conceding the Latino vote, the women vote, and the young people vote, because it's the same message. The message is liberty. The question is, how do you deliver it in a way where it resonates with each group? Here's why Douglass is so key. Blacks, Latino, women, young people, even conservatives. Douglass resonates powerfully with all those groups. I share with you why he resonates with blacks. Frederick Douglass is a grandfather of the civil rights movement. It started with him. Frederick Douglass was an ordained AME Zion preacher. How does he resonate with Latinos and Asians? He supported Asian immigration. His work ethic. He was a savvy businessman. He supported immigration. He supported legal immigration. How does he resonate with women? 1848, Seneca Falls, New York. That was the first ever women's rights convention ever in the country. They invited some men to come to the convention, but they invited one man to speak. Who do you think that was? Frederick Douglass. They affectionately referred to Douglass as a women's rights man back then. Frederick Douglass. How does he resonate with young people? Well, think about it. He was a slave from birth to age of 20. While a slave, Douglass developed an action plan that prepared him for liberty. He knew how to read and write while he was on slave master entitlements. He maximized educational opportunities. In fact, while in slavery as a teenager, Douglass started a tutorial program to teach other slaves how to read and write, and it was illegal. But Douglass went to the slave master and said, let me start this program. And the slave master said, okay. Other slave masters in the area heard about it, complained about it, they shut it down. How does he resonate with conservatives, white conservatives? he gives you hope. Now you got a strategy how you can engage, how you can share your conservative philosophy with anybody. They can't call you a racist. They can't call you a sellout. They can't call that you hate the poor. Frederick Douglass is the answer. He's the answer. God has heard the cries of his people. He's given us the answer. I'm so thankful God is using me and allowing me to do something great for him. This book is not an intimidating read. Wrote it like that on purpose. This is an action handbook for conservatives. It gives you the information you need so you can engage. What did Douglass say about the Constitution? You got to be able to deal with that because the left try to demonize the Constitution. What did Douglass say about the 3/5 clause? What did Douglass say about this whole thing about limited government, personal responsibility, welfare mentality, wealth redistribution? Douglass said this on one occasion. He said slavery is based on the distorted philosophy of taking the fruits of one man's labor and giving it to another so he can remain idle. That sounds like wealth redistribution to me. Douglass said that. So this book gives you the information you need so you can engage. In this companion guide, I identified the 12 most asked challenges that we face as conservatives. How you take that challenge and you turn around, you make a teachable moment, then when you inspire them to join our ranks. I've seen some of the most entrenched Democrats change how they vote, including my parents. So how would you respond? Before you met me, if you're talking to someone and they ask you, are you a conservative, what would you say? You said yes, you just lost. You know why? You know why? The word is synonymous with the word racist. So how you turn it around? K. Carl, are you a conservative? I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, and I believe in the four life empowering values of Frederick Douglass: respect for the Constitution, respect for life. I believe in limited government, and I believe in personal responsibility. Now, when you study Christ's ministry, sometimes Christ will respond to a question with a question. You got to do the same thing sometimes. Now, do you believe in those four life empowering values of Frederick Douglass? This is a center right nation. Most folks can say yes. Well, guess what? That makes you a conservative, but you can't leave them there. Better still, that makes you a Frederick Douglass Republican. That's the hook. That's the hook. Now I'm giving something you can do. Here's another one. K. Carl, now before you met me, somebody asked you, are you affiliated with the Tea Party movement? Are you a Tea Party activist? What would you say? What would you say? Yes. You just lost. You just lost. Why? The word conservative, the word Tea Party, word Republican, negative connotation. K. Carl, are you affiliated with the Tea Party movement? Are you a Tea Party activist? I agree with Frederick Douglass, who once said, I will unite with anybody. I will unite with anybody who wants to do right. In this book, either I'm standing behind the Christ or I'm standing behind Douglass. How are you going to argue with a runaway slave? You cannot out-victimize Frederick Douglass. I don't care what victim category, I don't care if you black, Latino, all these victim groups that the liberal left has identified and tell them they're victims. You cannot out-victimize Douglass. Well, K. Carl, do many people know this about Douglass? When I go out there and talk, what are they going to know? Not too many people know anything about it. They don't know the substance of Douglass. But listen to this. If they don't know the substance of Douglass, and you do, who's driving the narrative? Who is influencing whom? That's when they start joining your ranks. Frederick, and I didn't say this earlier, the Frederick Douglass Republican message. One of the challenges in the book is, K. Carl, are you a Republican? Before you met me, what would you have said? Yes, you just lost. K. Carl, are you a Republican? I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. And there's a difference between the two. I'm anti-status quo Republican Party. I'm anti-establishment Republican Party. The Republican Party today does not resemble the party of Douglass. And what we want to do with this movement, help the Republican Party to reclaim its political distinction and get it back to where it was at the time of Douglass. It's all in the book. See, what I learned, when you want to negotiate with somebody, they say he who speaks first loses. That's when you want to negotiate. But when you're in a debate and you try to get your message across, there are some things you must say first. You must say that you're a Frederick Douglass Republican and let them know that you're not a Bull Connor type conservative. You must say that first. You must say, we identify the Republican Party got problems. You got to say that first. Say, for example, if you don't say that, and they ask you, well, the Republican Party today is not the same thing as it used to be. Even though you come back with a good response, they think they just drew blood because you didn't say it first. You got to set up the perimeter. You got to set the framework for the conversation that's about to ensue. Who's going to challenge Frederick Douglass? His respect for the founding fathers, his respect for the Constitution. Douglass is so key because this Constitution thing is important. The liberals are using the Constitution in a negative way, especially with these victim groups. Douglass trumps all that in his own words. Douglass trumps one thing they say, oh, conservatives and Republican conservatives don't care about the poor. No, Republicans don't care about the poor. I didn't say I was a Republican. I said I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. And nobody's done more for the poor than Frederick Douglass. It's in the book. It's in the book. You don't have to write this down. So you get a sense of what I'm sharing with you. So tonight, what I'm saying to you, let's get past all this rhetoric and talking to the problem. We need some solutions to the problem. Tonight, you got a solution. Tonight, you got a strategy. Now there's something you can do. You don't have to wait for the next rally asking, what can we do? You got it right now. You got to go home and practice this thing. You got to get in the mirror and practice. You got to go through the 12 challenges. You got to carefully study to show yourself approved. You can't be an empty suitor. You just can't say I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican and never study. Read Douglass' autobiography. Start with his first autobiography, The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. Read his first autobiography. Matter of fact, I would suggest to you, read everything you can that Douglass wrote about himself. He wrote 3 autobiographies. Don't read what somebody else said about Douglass. Read what Douglass said about himself first. That's very important because some folks got it wrong. For example, there's one book out that's called The Radical. It's a comparison of Douglass, paralyzing life of Douglass and Lincoln. The Radical and the Revolutionist. Calling Lincoln a radical, calling Douglass a revolutionist. Douglass, in his own writing, said, I'm not a revolutionist. I don't want to tear things up and start over. Douglass said, I'm a reformer. I want things to improve. Take the existing system, make it better. That's why you got to read Douglass. I haven't always been like this. I grew up in a Democrat household. When I tested myself that night and God started giving me this conservative utterance, I went through 3 days of depression. I went through 3 days of depression because all the things that I believed to be true, I found out was a lie. I thought Bull Connor was a Republican. I thought George Wallace was a Republican. I thought the people who started the KKK were Republicans. I thought the people who bombed 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama were Republicans. They were all Democrats. Depression started seeping in. I didn't realize I had been fooled like this. The second thing that led to my depression, when I started testing how I was voting, I didn't realize, I was not conscious of the fact that through my vote, I was spitting in my God's face. I wouldn't do that on purpose. And the folks who are not voting their values, they're not doing it on purpose. We've been deceived by the great deceiver. The third thing that led to my depression, I knew that by accepting this utterance that God has given me, being a conservative or Frederick Douglass Republican, not so much Frederick Douglass Republican, but being a conservative, I knew right then if I accepted this, I was isolating myself in the black community. I was isolating myself. And that initially was a lonely feeling. I was isolating myself with my family. If it wasn't for Douglass, there wouldn't have been a legacy, a strong legacy of President Lincoln. Because Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Wendell Phillips, Charles Sumner, they agitated Lincoln. Lincoln didn't have it together. Lincoln improved. Lincoln improved. And he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. You know, Lincoln at one time had this Back to Africa movement. We want to send black folks back there. Because Lincoln believed that whites and blacks could not exist in this country. And Douglas said, you lost your mind. They started agitating Lincoln. Lincoln improved. The question is, do I have any examples how this methodology is working in the Latino community? We've got several examples. One of the things we've done already, we've translated this to Spanish. And that's a good question because in the Latino community, they don't have an icon like Douglass with this American experience. It works with it because They realized Douglas was the adversity he faced coming from the bottom of the slavery. So that story resonates with them, so they get it. Now, we haven't published the book in Spanish yet, but it's just been translated. Yes, it works. I'm working with Reverend Samuel Rodriguez. He's the chairman of the, make a long story short, he has 33,000 churches under his leadership, some 18 million Latinos. We're going to put the book in his hand, and he's already agreed to that because they know, and we share the same values. He knows that, hey, we need to look at Douglas. This is the answer. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.